All right, perfect. Hello, everybody. My name is Joshua Fox. I'm a technical account manager here at Ingram, and today we're going to be talking about Aruba Instant. And just to shadow a little bit of what Brandon said, the reason we wanted to do this is because there's been a really large push of Instant On, and you know we've come across a couple of situations where we can see people being a little bit confused with Aruba Instant and Aruba Instant On. So today we want to take a little bit more of a deeper look into the Aruba Instant and get you prepared to talk about the mid-market versus the smaller 100 user less SMB side, and give you the tools you need to be able to talk about both of these solutions. Now, this is a really good time to go over this because Aruba Instant just dropped its new code 8.5. So as part of our training today, we are going to have John Bushart and our BTC give you guys a little quick guided demo of what the instant overview, or the instant, I should say, GUI looks like, so that you have a good idea of how that management interface looks like. And if you want to know what the instant on one looks like and you didn't make it to our previous webinar, again, we have that posted right up on our YouTube channel. So you can go take a look right after this or any time that's convenient for you, and get a look over at the instant on access points. So let's go ahead and get started here. So for our agenda, I want to talk to you guys first a little bit about the controllerless architecture in general. We'll talk about how Instant actually works there. Then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the features and differentiators that the Instant line brings to the table. We'll talk about all the ways that you can manage or scale out and how flexible Instant can be. Then we'll take a look at all of the access points in our portfolio. We'll spend a little bit of time comparing and contrasting the Instant versus the Instant On, and then we'll go ahead and end you there with the demo. All right, so what is a controllerless Wi-Fi network? I think it's good to first take a step back and look about how things used to be done. And there was a legacy mode that access points were always deployed in, and it was just called autonomous. And autonomous was, it worked to get Wi-Fi for a little bit, but it ran into some major problems immediately. Since you had to manage each of those access points by itself, they weren't one holistic WLAN. So you had these fragmented management policies, right? If you wanted to set up, let's say, a pre-shared key, you'd have to put in that pre-shared key into every single access point that you wanted to manage, and it just, it wasn't a very good solution, right? There wasn't any traffic coordination in that type of solution, nor was there any type of roaming, so really bad for any type of application that required you to move around. And there wasn't a lot of Wi-Fi optimization. Think about things like RF channel selection, making sure you're on a channel without noise, and so on. And so because of that, the first controllers came into existence to kind of take this autonomous mode and kind of get rid of it. It was just too hard to scale out with it. And with that, we have the first controllers were only 6 access points. They were really modest at the time. But as Wi-Fi became more and more ubiquitous, it became, higher and higher amounts of access points we would need to control. And so controllers started to add a bit of a cost. There was a hardware you had to purchase. There was licensing you had to purchase for it. And the ability to manage so many access points actually started to become complicated. So there was an IT cost or resource that needed to be added as well. And that's actually where Aruba first started and had its bread and butter and introduced the instant access points. Instant access points were a controllerless access point where one controller would assume the role of a virtual controller and give you all the features and bells and whistles of a controller-based network, but without actually having to deploy a controller. They were very easy to manage. They were very easy to install. They still gave you that rich user and application experience that people were used to when a controller was configured properly. There was a lot of intelligent Wi-Fi optimization and security features, again, typically with your controller. And another added benefit is you had built-in resiliency, since one access point was assuming that virtual controller or virtual master, if it were to fail, another access point could pick up that management and you could just keep going without actually having, lost your network. Versus in controller networks, if you didn't have an HA solution, one would fail and your network could possibly be going down. So the controllerless mode or model became a real bread and butter and a real foundation of the instant solution, or I should say the Aruba solution. All right. So again, these are enterprise grade. They're pretty affordable. Now they're pretty scalable as well. And an instant access point, you can go up to 128 IAPs in a single cluster and up to 2,000 devices. Because of this, we like to say 1,000 users or so is where you want to look at. When you're looking over at the instant on, those are 100 users and less. So for the instant access point, the reason we want to say it's mid-market is because about 100 users to 1,000 users, this is really where you're going to want to play. Now we're going to go over more all the features here in more details, but there's a lot of rich experiences. You have the ability to do context user roles with these access points, giving you a lot of control both in security and quality of service. There's a lot of integration and ease of use with guest access portals. We have integration even with some of our social media logins and so on. A big portion or a big feature of this is our patented RF and client optimization. You might have heard of client match or ARM. We'll go over those a little bit more detail here. We also have seamless management with these. Zero touch provisioning is a big one for a lot of people. Very simple and easy to use. These access points are fully featured out of the box. So no licensing when you're talking about instant access points versus their controller counterparts. We also have integrated intelligence and security. Dynamic segmentation actually comes from our wireless side, and it's part of the instant solution. We have rogue detection and spectrum analysis, again, without a controller, and one of the only real vendors out there that is able to put a WIP solution together without having some kind of additional software or control plane. We're able to do that just with the access points. And as I mentioned before, we have high resiliency with these and site redundancy just based on the way that the instant architecture works. All right, so what are some of the features? Let's get right into it. So first of all, let's talk about the PEF, or Policy Enforcement Module, which basically allows controllerless access points to enable role-based access control and automatically assign appropriate rules and privileges to clients. So basically what this allows you to do is have a client that's attaching into an Aruba network can associate with a user role, which is going to determine what network privileges they have. And then those privileges can be defined inside of firewall policies. These firewall policies are application aware, because they are able to do deep packet inspection, and they're also session aware. So we can, by application, deny, throttle, bandwidth, whatever we want, and use that as another way of control. There's a stateful firewall directly in here. And we're also able to apply some quality of service based on any of the parameters that we've said before. One of the things that we can do right when a person's connecting, we can identify or fingerprint the user using our the operating system that they're using. So we know what they're using, if it's good, if it's not good. From there, we can use PEF to control where users are going using the policy enforcement rules or firewall rules that we're using. We can prioritize the traffic based on the applications that we have. Then we can optimize our performance using our quality of service rules, and we can follow end to end everything that a user might be doing. Now, you don't by any means have to set up any of these when you're setting up an instant access point, but these are pretty powerful features when you consider usually you need some kind of backend firewall or a controller just to put this kind of thing into use. Again, no licensing to enable this. If you were looking at a controller-based solution with Aruba, you would be looking at a license to enable this kind of feature. This feature does not exist in the instant online. So if you need that extra control, that extra security, and that extra ability of doing quality of service, instant access points are a really good way to go because they give you all of that without actually making you buy a controller. We also have guest portals and guest access. Now, here's a quick screenshot of just a basic instant guest portal or guest access. If you went to our Aruba Central webinar, you would have seen some of the things that you can do pretty cool with Aruba Central and kind of make that look better. But we can make it look pretty clean. It doesn't look bad by any means. A quick terms and conditions captive portal where you can bring people on. Now, we can also do log on using Facebook, or we can do log on using another social media. the real power of, Captive Portal for anybody out there listening is basically giving us the ability to capture end user information, as well as actually talk to or work with the people that might be, shopping or utilizing our services. Think about how the ways that you can engage with customers over Facebook or other social Wi-Fi or social media types of login, and even simple things like getting an email address can be really powerful. So this is a good way for us to secure our guests coming onto the network, as well as a way for us to engage with them going forward. So whenever you're looking or talking to somebody about their business, understanding what their business is and how they're doing it could help you understand how a captive portal could help them to facilitate that business. Now here's some real good bread and butter here, and this is a patented RF and client optimization. It's our adaptive radio management, or ARM. This is going to maximize our Wi-Fi stability, predictability, and it's going to dynamically choose the best channel to be on, as well as the transmit power to be on. So you can imagine being, let's say you're in a mall or something of that situation, or maybe not even a mall. Maybe you just are on the side street, you're a local coffee shop, and everybody else around you is also using Wi-Fi, right? Well, this is going to allow the access point itself to do a scan, see what channels are the best channels, and then just automatically jump over to the channel that's the best and make sure that the transmit power is the best for that channel. Let's say you're in an office and an access point fails. The access points around you will be able to turn up their power on their radios to try to cover that bit of a dead spot since that first access point had failed, right? Adaptive radio management is going to give you the ability to do those. Now, as a part of adaptive radio management, you're also getting a really cool feature called Client Match. And Client Match, you can think of it, the best way to think of it is it's going to make sure that a client is on the best access point for the best wireless experience that they could possibly be on. Now, this is the solution that's going to help us with our sticky clients, forcing roams so that a client will go to a better access point. This is going to give us all of our load balancing features. If an access point has too many users connected into it, we can force some of those access points to go to another access. I'm sorry, we could force users to go to another access point that might not be used as often. So it doesn't have as many users connected to it. We can load balance that no problem. And the beautiful side of that is there's really no client-side software required. We're able to do that just with the access point. Now, as part of Wi-Fi 6, we've also introduced Wi-Fi 6 client match aware, or AX aware client match. Basically, what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to say, if this is an AX client, we're going to move it to an AX access point. So we could see if they're on the most current standard and make sure they're on the access point that makes sense for them. This is important because certain features like OFDMA, they're not going to be able to take advantage of that on legacy access points. So as those new clients start to come into the environment, if we've already future-proofed with our 500 series access points, then those clients can always make sure that they're having the better performance, and we can move other clients over to the Wave 2 so that they're not impacting people that have already made the move to the best technology. All right, application RF. Application RF is it's a pretty interesting one. It's our way of looking into using deep packet inspection into the applications that we are using. Basically, application RF is Aruba Instance intelligently monitoring application users and web traffic to secure and optimize the network. It's deep packet inspection monitors application usage and performance, and also optimizes our bandwidth, priority, and network paths in real time. And that even works for anything that might be encrypted. The application RF side also gives us a lot of information that we can use for our content filtering. So as you're looking into the reporting here and you're seeing all the applications that everybody might be using, you're seeing where your bandwidth is going. This is where you can start setting up a content filter. Oh, everybody's going to YouTube. They're eating up X amount of my bandwidth. I might not have enough bandwidth to serve everybody. Maybe I want to put a bandwidth limiter on that. Or maybe I see that everybody's at Facebook at work all day. Maybe I want to just cut that off completely. right? So the app RF is going to give you all the information you need and all the visibility you need and allow you to make those content filtering decisions. Now, important to note, the content filter is something that we're supporting right inside of Instant, so this isn't something you have to tie to a separate appliance. It just means that you're going to get the visibility into what you're looking at with AppRF, and you can make those decisions based off of that information right inside of the Instant access points. All right. Now, this is another important one that we have here. It's the RF Protect, automatic classification and security threats, prevents denial of the service, man in the middle, and other attacks from a wireless perspective. It can identify and contain rogue wireless devices. We're also is going to allow us to identify the sources of RF interference, as well as allow us to do some spectrum monitoring so that we can make channel optimization and adapt to noise. We can also capture playback of any intermittent interference in our environment. Now, to my knowledge, anything that you're running with WIPs out there, you would need to license it on anybody else's type of solution. With Instant, again, you don't really have to license that. Wireless intrusion prevention is right here and built in. Now, I mentioned earlier we can fingerprint OSs. We can also use that in conjunction with the RF Protect here. We fingerprinted an OS. We know that that OS isn't something we want, and just deny that and not allow that in. We also have the ability to block intrusions from rogue access points and so on that might be getting connected into the environment, all right here within the Instant operating system. All right. Now, I know I mentioned this right up here at the beginning, but there's a lot of resiliency and reliability that comes right with any type of Instant cluster, and that has to do with the reason the access points themselves, they actually, one access point, the virtual controller, holds the management and all the configurations, and then passes that out to the rest of the access points that have all joined the cluster, right? So if that first access point were to fail, there's an algorithm built in. It can pick another access point. That access point can pick up and start start the management without you actually losing anything. So you're going to get maximized uptime from that. As I mentioned, the new access point is elected dynamically without any kind of impact to the user experience. Client connectivity, roaming, and other services are not impacted during this process, so you don't have to worry about somebody going down and coming back up. We have multiple uplink options. A lot of access points now have multiple Ethernet and can actually do PoE failover, basically two PoE ports coming in. If one were to fail, that's okay. You're still powering the access point. Works great if you're using the UPoE standards. I believe that's BT now. But a lot of our access points will still work in low power mode, even if they have those two and you weren't able to get it, let's say even AT. Let's say you're doing two AF ports coming in, so 15 watts of port coming in, you could still power it in low power mode, giving a situation like that. Now, a lot of our access points have USB ports on them. You might have seen that. That's because we can plug a cellular modem directly into the access point for some uplink in case the primary connection is lost. Now, we can also I was going to say on some of the new access points, it's not really here in this slide, but there actually is a way to Bluetooth console into the access point. So if some of you remember getting a console cable and consoling into an access point, especially on the new 370 series outdoor access points, those access points actually allow you to Bluetooth directly in to do the console into the access point. So a lot easier to actually set those up, do any reboots or mandatory things that you need to do. You don't actually have to get up on a ladder, go up to the access point, fiddle around, try to connect into the back of it. That mount would get in the way. So a lot easier if you needed to connect into those outdoor access points that might be a little bit high up. All right, so I've mentioned this before. I don't think I've mentioned it in this training, but all of our access points come with a limited lifetime warranty. So you are going to get the software updates for these access points, and you are going to be able to get a replacement of an access point if it were to break for the lifetime of the product. So you definitely can buy these and have a lot of peace of mind just knowing that Aruba is going to have your back in case something were to break on it or it needed to be replaced, or let's just say you needed to get that firmware. We're not going to, tie you into some kind of contract here just to get that for these access points. We're pretty aware of the mid-market budget constraints, so we want to give that out as freely as possible to those folks. All right, guys, this is just a quick summary then of all the kind of features we went over. Adaptive radio management and client match, perfect for making sure that everybody is on the right access point and that we always have the best RF possible. We covered the spectrum load balancing, multi-user capabilities. We talked about how there's role-based access, application visibility. We have content filtering directly in these, as well as WIPs. There's a lot of flexible deployment and management solutions. Actually, we're going to go over that next. And we definitely covered the resiliency of the access points there. So I want to just kind of go over all the different ways that you can manage or work with an instant access point and kind of show you that even though you start with instant, you can move in a lot of different ways. So first of all, and you'll get a better look at this when we go into the demo, but this is just an overall look of what the dashboard looks like inside of instant. If you buy instant, you can always just use it. You can always just manage it right in the cluster. So that's definitely one good way to do it. It's a good way to start, especially with a business that's in that kind of mid-market and has a lot of expansion. Because what happens if they grow? They start adding extra sites. Maybe they make a move to cloud. Well, that's okay. Take those same instant access points and you can add on Aruba Central. You can add on Aruba switches. You can add on those value add services without actually having to replace any of your hardware there. You can also add on a branch gateway and go with the SD branch solutions and go with a full Aruba Central solution there. Again, without actually having to replace your wireless. It's a big differentiator with some of our competitors because with a lot of those, there's a cost to enter the cloud. You have to buy cloud-ready access points, and then if you wanted to exit the cloud, then you have to move to an on-prem solution. So there's a lot more flexibility here to move in the way you want. But let's say you don't like cloud. You do have multiple sites. You do want to manage multiple sites, but maybe it's government, or maybe you're in a situation where cloud just isn't the way for you. Well, that's okay. We can do Aruba Airwave. Airwave is an on-premise solution that allows you to manage and monitor access points, third-party network equipment. We can add that right on and manage instant access points actually with Airwave. And in fact, Buffalo Wild Wings is a customer that does that. They have a lot of different locations all around the country. They serve wings and good stuff like that. They use instant access points with Airwave and manage it across all their sites. So definitely a good way to go if you don't like the Aruba Central option. And then this is just kind of an overall view here for you. We have Aruba Instant on the left that you can use using the Instant UI. You can add Aruba Central or Aruba Airwave, no problem. We can add ClearPass to the side if you want to add some security, or we can transition over to a mobility controller from that same instant access point. So as you can see, it's a very good foundational product. It's a great place to start, and it gives you a lot of growth opportunities to move into all the different Aruba solutions that we offer. All right, so I'd like to take a moment here and actually talk about the products. And first, I actually want to talk about this new access point that just got released. It's actually two access points that's inside of the AP370 series, the AP375EX and the AP377EX. Now, these are rated for hazardous environments. They're Class 1 Division 2 or Class 1 Zone 2, depending on which hazardous material ratings that you're looking at. But basically, these access points are meant to be ruggedized and used in situations or places that are hazardous to a point where an explosion could happen. So think about this as an example. Let's say we have an oil rig or something of that nature. And in an oil rig, you might have situations where something malfunctions, a pump malfunctions, a sensor malfunctions, and then maybe some of the oil becomes airborne, or maybe some of the processes create an explosive that is airborne. And if it comes in contact with an electrical device, that could set off an explosion. Well, a Class 1 Division 2 device or a Class 1 Zone 2 device basically will not cause that explosion. It's rated to be able to work in a semi-explosive explosive type of gas situation for a certain amount of time without actually causing that explosion. They're not meant to be in a situation where explosives are always going to be prevalent. They're more meant in like the case of a failure, like I mentioned, that pump or that sensor going down and that toxic chemical or explosive chemical is released. These access points won't cause that explosion. So oil rigs are definitely a great place to go. I would assume lots of manufacturing, maybe like chlorine plants or any chemical kind of plant. I could even see it in, you know, everything, all my mind keeps going back to chemical hazard situations. But outside of that, you can kind of see any type of situation where an electrical component could cause an explosion and they need to be rated in a way that Aruba access points would not be causing that, but they need Wi-Fi in that environment, then these access points are going to be great. So that OT world is probably going to, you know, attach onto these pretty hungrily. It makes sense that we made that Siemens partnership now. So over here, I kind of want to go over all the access points. Now, I did this all on one slide because I kind of wanted to show you everything here by the categories that they're in. So over on the left, we have our outdoor access points. The AP 367 is our entry level. The 365 is our other entry level. The 67 has a directional coverage with a 80 by 80 beam width. So you can imagine a little cone of coverage coming off of that. The 365 is omnidirectional. These are both 2x2 and really good for your low-cost outdoor. Now, our 375 and 374 are going to be more of our high-performance outdoor. Those are going to be the ones that you want to use if you're in a situation outside where you have high density. They're both 4x4 on the 5, 2x2 on the 2.4 gigahertz, and the 374, just keep in mind that that access point does not come with antennas. You'll need to add those separately. Now, the 377 is going to give you your beam coverage, much like the 367. It's 80 by 80 there. So you can go ahead and use that as a directional coverage. The 318 is a replacement to the 218. It's ruggedized for temperature, but it's not waterproof. Think refrigerator, freezer, maybe a warehouse that's not temperature controlled. Also, we'll need you to add the antennas to it. And then our 387 is our dedicated outdoor bridge. Uses a 40 gig radio with a backup 5 gig radio, giving you point-to-point connectivity with a lot of bandwidth. And then if, you know, it rains or you have that inclement weather that kind of interferes with that 40 gig radio, we do have a backhaul of the 5 gig for failover. We have our hospitality APs, the AP 303H, 203H, and the 203R. The 203R is more of a wrap or remote access point, but it does fall into that hospitality space. Hospitality access points can mount over a wall gang, or they can mount with a desktop mount. So they're perfect in those situations where you wouldn't really be mounting to the ceiling or you're using with a remote worker. And then our indoor access points, we have our 303s, both the P and the non-P version. The P version is interesting because it allows you to do a daisy chain of access points. You can plug in one access point and power the next, and you just kind of daisy chain those off. You can do that with one additional access point. So it's not like you can daisy chain forever, but it does give you the ability to run a little bit less cabling if you're looking to just daisy chain the access point off. Now the 305 and 315 are, and 345 are entry, mid, and high level in terms of densities. The 304, 314, and 344 are their external antenna counterparts. And then we move into the Wi-Fi 6, the 15, AP 515, AP 535, and AP 555 are mid-range, high performance, and then really extreme high performance, extreme high density in the 8x8 on that AP 55. Our AP 514 and 534 access points are going to be the external antenna versions of those. As you can see here, there isn't a 554, so there is not an external antenna version of that super high density access point. There's really only the antenna versions of the 34 and below. All right, so now that you've seen all of the features and you've seen all the access points, let's talk about the positioning a little bit here. So instant on access points, those access points you want to be less than 100 users. Again, a mobile app or cloud-based portal for those, so you have a little bit less how you want to manage those. You want to use those in places that have little or no IT support, and they're all going to be right sized for that small business. They're only 802.11 AC. There's 5 models, 4 indoor and 1 outdoor model, and your support is 90 days of phone, online chat for a year, and then the community that comes along with that. Now, your instant access points is when you start to get to that 100 users and beyond. We can use these and manage them a lot of different ways. We can do Airwave, we can do Cloud, we can just use the regular central interface, we can move it over to a controller, so a lot of different options there. You do need a little bit more technical to use an instant access point. You need a generalist or a specialist. You don't really need a full admin guy, but it's not going to be that, science teacher, just kind of working it for you. You're going to want somebody that maybe knows a little bit about networking, like I said, a generalist or a specialist. There's a lot of upgrade options with these, as I mentioned, and again, 128 access points in the network versus 25 access points in the network, definitely a lot more scalable. We do have Wave 2 and AX access points here, and when we were going over the models, you saw there's a lot more. We have 30 plus models, including the external antenna options, and we have a lot of external antenna options out there, so there's a lot of portfolio in the instant access points. And then there's supports 8x5 best effort TAC for the first 90 days, the Airheads community after that, and again, a limited lifetime warranty on the instant access points. So again, 25 APs, 100 users per site, 128 APs, and 2,000 users per site in an instant. With regular instant on access points, tens of sites. When you're looking at instant access points with Central or Airwave, we can get into the thousands of sites managed. When you're looking at instant on access points, all the enterprise features are kind of not there. When you're looking over at the instant access points, though, there's quite a few different features that we talked about today that all kind of meet that. Firewall is a big one. I won't read through the rest of those. I think we're getting a little redundant at this point, but user roles, RF, application, WebCC, all of those control features, user roles, all of that. That's stuff that you get inside of Instant, not inside of Instant On. So hopefully that kind of covers everything that is instant, everything that is instant on. I know we're going over a little bit of time here, and I want to give John his chance to do the demo portion. So I'm going to go ahead and jump this over to John. Take a look at the questions and answers. Looks like we had a couple of questions that came through while I was doing the presentation. And then John can go ahead and he can take it from here. Let me see if I can get them.
Let me see if I can grab it here.
Here we go. All right, John, you should have the ball there.
All right, can you see my desktop?
We can, yep.
All right, so I'm John Bussard. I run out of our Business Transformation Center, our BTC. So I provide demonstrations as well as proof of concept capabilities. I support servers, storage, networking, as well as wireless technologies from HPE, as well as Aruba. I'm here to help you guys understand these new technologies. We certainly want to do this, certainly because there's a new Aruba Instant interface. I'll say that the old interface, everything that Josh was talking about, those capabilities were in the older interface. But I'd say maybe it was looking a little bit long in the tooth, and I'm glad they've kind of changed it over to this new interface. And that will come with version 8.5. So if you're running anything below 8.5, you won't see this. And again, this matches, the type of look and feel that you'll see across the product portfolio. Instant was just kind of the oddball for a little while there. But at any rate, if you're moving from the old Instant interface to the new one, it's not going to be too difficult for you to be able to adjust. The context and everything are the same. It just looks a little bit different. I would say if you took an Instant on access point and converted it into the cloud, the same way that you kind of got your look and feel in the cloud, it'll be a familiar way of noticing the menu items and things that you'll see within that environment. So I will say the new interface, when you look at it, is definitely a analytics forward type of messaging inside the environment. I would say, maybe big data in nature, grabbing all kinds of great sensor information that's out there and presenting it to you. Not that this wasn't in the older interface, it just wasn't, front and center as it is in this environment. We can tell. And I kind of set up a wireless network and I put a client on it just so I can get some kind of information kind of running through here so we can see some throughput and get a little bit of things that are happening. But speaking to Josh's point, this is a virtual controller mechanism, and I know some people have different terms for a virtual controller, but basically what there is if you get these access points on the same subnet, One of them will become the master, and that would be this access point here, and it'll run the virtual controller. If this master goes away, another one within the cluster will take ownership of this virtual controller and start broadcasting it on this IP, and that's what I'm logging into, and that's what we see here. Things over here in blue are clickable. For example, if I click on networks, it'll bring me down into the networks category, and this is my one SSID or my one network that's up and running inside my environment, and I get great analytics across that. One of the nice things I think is App RF inside the environment. So if I click on that, I get a great view into the way people are using this network. So I could see all my app categories, and obviously the bigger the box, you know, the bigger the impact inside the environment. But if I look at lists, I can get a listing of that information as well. And again, over here we could see the same type of information, but this would be more of an applications type of category. And again, I could get a list based on that. And then web content categories, and again, we can look at a list based on that. And then all these people, where are they going? Are they trustworthy sites? Right? And in this case, this client is going to some pretty trustworthy sites out there. Right? And again, this is all clickable. I could go across. I could go back to access points. So I've got 2 access points inside this cluster right now. Right, so I've got this one as well as this guy down here. And again, I can look at an access point level. Again, look at that app RF information. So what type of information is flowing through this access point? Again, we could get a list version of it. Over here, again, we can get a list version. And we can go all the way through. So again, analytics forward type of concept inside this environment. I can even go down into the clients themselves and get the same type of information. But want again, all kinds of great information about the air that they're connecting to. All right, so with that being said, what I'm going to do is we're going to go down to configuration, and again, if you're new to Instant, this will give you an idea of how easy it is to be able to set up one of these. If you've done Instant in the past, this will give you an idea of how kind of the context has changed, and again, you'll notice that a lot of the configuration options are still the same. So I'm going to go down to networks. You can see my one lonely SSID is running up here, and I've got a couple wired networks that kind of come with the access point. But what I'm going to go through is create a new wireless networking environment, and I'm going to use this client, and we're going to connect to that wireless network. As a matter of fact, if I open up a web browser right now, you can see I don't have any access to the internet. So click the plus side. We're going to give this a name. We'll call it New Aruba. Let's say Production Network. And what type of we're going to do? We'll do a wireless network, and then I want to choose its primary usage. So an employee would be the general use case that you use for people who just need to provide, employee access to the environment. You can also see we have voice as well as guest. We'll tinker around with the guest in a little bit. I'm going to select employee, and I'm going to click next. Now I get to choose how I want to assign my IP addresses, so they can be assigned from a DHCP server on a network. Right? I could choose what VLAN I want to attach to. So the VLAN in this case would be the native VLAN that this access point was plugged into. But if I want to do a static VLAN, I could certainly do that. And I'm going to do that right now. Now, one thing of note, I could do a virtual controller assigned, and what that would do is that'll put a little NAT router between the client and the network, and then it'll allow you to be able to spit out some IP addresses for that. But again, another layer of protection, and it'll especially use for maybe a guest network, and I'll show you a little bit out of that again. So I'm going to drop these people on VLAN 87. We're going to click next. I got a variety of options of how I want to be able to connect people in the environment. So certainly I could do a personal with a simple passphrase if I wanted to, but there are a great many other options. But even in this case, I could do MAC authentication. I could do blacklisting if they've attached too many times, as well as some of the generic roaming options. But other pieces that I have here, certainly there's a variety over here, but I also have enterprise level of security. So this would be if you're using some type of radius server. Certainly there's an internal server if you wanted to, and I could add users to this if I felt like it. And people can get connected in that fashion. If you notice with this, we have WPA3 as far as security, right? And I can also connect to a ClearPass server if I felt like it. And even if I'm looking at just personal, we could also do WPA3 if we felt like it. I'm just going to leave it on the personal settings with the basic passphrase. And we're going to click next. Oops, let's change that a little. Let's try that again. All right, next I get to choose what type of roles. Right now I'm going to leave this unrestricted. I'm just going to get this client connected. We're going to come back and tinker with these in a little bit. So I'm just going to click Finish. All right, and then I've created my first SSID inside this environment. All right, this will populate in a little bit, and I should be able to go over here and allow this client to be able to connect to this network. So let's see if we can find it. Scroll down. Not yet. Let's try it again. There it is. There's our new network. So let's connect to this guy. Put in my passphrase. And then we're all connected. And again, we should have internet access. So at this time, let's go to, I don't know, let's try CNN. Let's try YouTube. All right, and we'll also, we'll do Fox News as well. All right, and real quick to plug myself on YouTube, if you go up to YouTube and you search Ingram BTC, you'll find that my page will show up. I can type here. And then I'll have access to, that's my ugly mug right there, so, but if you go in there, I'll have access to a bunch of YouTube videos that I create, and actually we'll get one rolling real quick here. Okay, you can see that kind of spooled off real quickly. So my point is, I have access to all these networks, untethered access to this, but what if I want to massage some of the traffic and kind of make sure that people are only getting to things that I really wanted them to get to, or I didn't want the next kitty cat video out there to kind of eat up the bandwidth if everybody goes and access that information on YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out these browsers real quick. Let's go back over and let's tinker with this new network. So over here, I'm going to select my SSID, I'm going to click Edit, and then instead of going through all this context, I'm actually just going to go to Access. Remember the unrestricted access we had there? I'm going to change that. Now, what I'm showing you here, I could certainly create a role out on that. It would be a quick way to be able to assign a standard type of policy that you wanted across different wireless networks within your environment. But just to kind of show you what's contained in some of these roles, we're going to do network-based. You can see right now my rule is allow anybody to any destination. So I'm going to add a new rule. And what we're going to do is we're going to select a web category, and maybe I don't want people to have access to those news sites that I was looking at. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select deny, and I'm going to click OK. And there's a variety of things that I could limit on. All right. I'm going to click OK. And why don't we do another one real quick? Why don't we do a application? And maybe, again, maybe I want users to be able to get out onto the network or go to YouTube, but I don't want, again, a viral video to be able to eat up all my bandwidth in my environment. So maybe I want to allow people to go to YouTube. So I'll select that, but I might want to do something like a application throttling. So let me lower these guys. We'll give them twice the 56K modem, if you guys remember a 56K modem. I'm old enough to remember that stuff. But I could do a bunch of things, right? But there's a whole variety of things that I could limit on. I can limit on network capabilities, just different ways. Right now, I'm allowing all users to all destinations, so I've got to order this correctly and move this down. It's certainly a top to bottom access in this environment. So I'll try to hit a rule from the top. If it doesn't find anything, it'll allow everybody to get on through. I'm going to click Finish. I'm going to apply this. Again, this is just included in this product. There's a whole variety of things that I could put in here in order to make that happen. Now let's go back over to our web browser and let's do something like, let's go back over to YouTube. Let's go back over to, here's Fox News. Notice I'm starting to cycle on that. Let's go over to CNN, and you'll see I'm cycling on that as well. YouTube is coming down, but you can tell it's coming down really, really, really slow. Again, I gave them twice the speed of a 56K modem, but you can see I do have access to that. So obviously, in a real world, I probably want to give people a little bit more speed inside the environment, but I'm just trying to show you a little bit of something here. And we'll go back over to the videos. And again, I have access to this stuff, but it's not happening really fast. So that kind of gives you a quick view as to some of the ways that you can massage this. And there's a variety of categories. I can stop people going from certain networks in the environment, block certain subnets, block certain systems, all kinds of things in the environment. You can really kind of tune your wireless connection based on what users are doing or what they're allowed to have access to. So real quick, let me close out of all these web pages and let's start another connection. So I want to forget this network real quick. So let's create a guest wireless network. That'd be something that people would want to do as well. So I'm going to go in there, and this time we're going to call it new Aruba guest. It's wireless, and this time I'm going to select a guest network. I'm going to click next. This time I'm going to do virtual controller manage. Again, I'm going to put that NAT router between my network and the user that's out there, protect the users from each other. And again, I'm going to have the controller assign some IP addresses on it. So this virtual controller, this NAT router that's kind of put into this is going to spit out IP addresses to the clients that connect into the environment. And I'll just use the default VLAN, but I could certainly use a custom VLAN if I wanted to. Here's my splash page, so I could certainly do internal acknowledge. I could do authenticated, so I could go in there and actually have people from the internal server. And there's actually a quick method to be able to add users on there. It would say it's an interface to where maybe the secretary at the front desk, right, could go in a non-confusing fashion, could create users and then hand out a guided guest access in the environment. But we could certainly do in this case, and there's that social media login if you needed it. So why don't we do internal acknowledged? Again, we could do MAC authentication, blacklisting. We can enforce DHCP. Right now, what my web page looks like is this when I go log in, but let's customize this a little bit. Again, if you need something a little bit more advanced, ClearPass would be a good use in conjunction with this, or the cloud portal using Aruba Central would be a great way to get a more comprehensive website. But this is we could do some pretty interesting things here. So for example, why don't I change that background color to this? Why don't I upload an image? Let me see if I can find something real quick. I think I have something here in the midst of all my PowerPoints. Let's see. Oh, here we go. We can use this. So we got this nice Ingram logo. And then I think I want to drop users off at the Ingram Micro website so they could go buy their own instant access point. So HTTPS. Let's see. I'll land people at that page. So again, now we could take a look at a preview of our landing site, and this is what our customers will see when they log in. I could change all the context over here as well if I wanted to, but we'll start there. Click next. All right, again, right now I'm doing unrestricted, but if I wanted to block people, right, again, I might make a role. Do a variety of things. We could do application. Why don't we do a web category? But there's a whole ton of web categories we probably might want to block out of our environment, right? And I'm just going to grab a few of things here, just so we can give you a little example, and let's reorder this. Again, I don't have to allow people untethered access to my guest network, so I can massage that. You'd probably want to massage that a little bit more than you would on your employee network, right? Because you don't want necessarily anybody to have that wireless network to have an impact on whatever's working inside the production environment. So again, let's go over here. Let's go to our client. See if we can find this new guest network. There it is. I'm going to click connect. And then if everything works well, my splash page comes up. I'm going to accept this, and I put my slashes in there. Oops. I put my slashes in wrong as far as my web page of it. But at any rate, it would have dropped me off at ingrammicros.site if I didn't fat finger that correctly, and then I could get onto their access to the rest of the environment. So again, this is the Aruba new Aruba Instant Interface. Again, you'll get that if you download and install 8.5 or higher. Anything lower, 8.4 or lower, won't give you these features. Again, this is the new interface. It has a common look and feel as compared to the other Aruba products. So they're dealing with Central, Airwave, or ClearPass, or any of those products. It'll have a similar look and feel inside the environment. So with that all being said, I'll toss this back to Josh.
All right, sounds good. All right, so everybody, that concludes our our webinar here. Let me go ahead and reshare my screen. All right, and let's see if I can unmute everybody. All right, I'm a little bit unsure on how to do the unmute here with that. So we did have some questions here that I can answer for everybody. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Our first question was, is the end user info captured and stored to be shared with our marketing team? I think that this person was asking about the Capita portal or social networking, and yes, you can capture that and you can share that. Is there any support to integrate content filtering features with wired clients? So not with instant access points directly, but John actually covered a little bit, but with ClearPass integration and controller, there's definitely good ways to control wired traffic as well as wireless traffic. But with instant access points, we're only talking about the wireless traffic when we're doing our content filtering. And then lastly, can SSIDs be associated with dedicated VLAN? Up to 32 SSIDs and VLANs? And the question, or sorry, the answer is yes, you can do VLAN tagging, you can associate SSIDs with VLANs, so you could do that, though it might be a little bit easier to do the rules on the user base and kind of take advantage of the dynamic segmentation, cut down on how many VLANs you create, but you could definitely just tag the SSIDs to the VLANs on the switches if you prefer. And that kind of answers all the questions that were asked. If anybody has any other questions, I'd say just type it into the chat there, and I'll go ahead and read those off. Otherwise, I can't figure out the unmute for all here. All right, guys, I'm not seeing any more questions come through. I think we answered all of them that did come through. So I'll go ahead and end it here. Definitely, if you have some additional questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much for joining in, and everybody have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.